resilient, optimistic, fueled his dreams and led a life of hope and conviction from this day 30 years ago. We are here today to explore, learn from, and celebrate the visionary that Vaidya is, who has worked tirelessly over the last few years to raise awareness about spinal cord injury in India. While I know him to some extent, I look forward to discovering more of him today along with you. I'd like to now introduce Ilango Tambayya. Ilango, an alumnus of IIT Madras and IIM Bangalore, is a corporate leader with long stints in reputed organizations such as Titan, Airtel, and the Tata Group. He has played an integral role in the Indian telecom story over the past 20 years. He is a co-founder along with Vaidya of the Ganga Foundation that focuses on enhancing the quality of life of persons with spinal cord injury. He is also involved in mentoring multiple startups, commercial as well as social ventures. Ilango is an active fitness enthusiast, having completed many marathons and is now pursuing his ambition of competing in Ironman. So over to you, Ilango.
Good. Thank you, Doctor. See, Dr. Prashar, she didn't tell enough about herself. She's a solopreneur who recently started her own private practice in clinical and rehabilitation psychology. She headed the Department of Psychology in Indian Spinal Injury Center prior to setting off on her own journey. Using a strength-based perspective, Dr. Divya Parashar has been working for over 2 decades with individuals in the field of mental health, enabling them to lead a meaningful, purposeful, and value-based life. She is an accomplished researcher in the field of rehabilitation psychology, a publisher, writer in popular newspapers on topics of mental health, fitness, active blogger, and she is also an avid marathoner. Now, I think I must talk about S. Vaidyanathan. Before I talk about him, I want you to visualize this. You are 25 years old. You are from a lower middle class financial background. You have worked and studied hard all your life and got admission into one of the most prestigious institutes in the world. And naturally, you would be looking forward to a great paying job that will bring joy and prosperity not only to you, but to the entire family. Just few months before this dream could come true, a split-second accident destroys everything. Not only yours, but all your family members. Suddenly the future is completely bleak with no hope and chance of normalcy returning. You wonder whether there is any light at the end of the tunnel. What will you do? Normally people blame God or get into depression, bitterness, anger. And there are times when people take extreme step of escaping from all this. What I that visualization, what you did is exactly what happened to Vaidyanathan, aka Vaidya, 30 years back. But unlike most people, Vaidya accepted the new reality and fought all his way for the last 30 years to achieve things that most of us can only dream of. He has become an example for countless people. I have personally witnessed numerous people who had given up and before they met Vaidya. And then they go back and charge and moving ahead in their lives in ways that would have appeared impossible before they had this meeting. Vaidya gives them a new hope. For his tremendous contribution over the last 30 years, IIM Bangalore, our alma mater, bestowed him with the honor of IIM Bangalore Distinguished Alumnus Awardee in the year 2018. And I'm glad I know him personally since 1989. And people ask me whether we are from the same class. The answer is no. Actually, neither of us attended a class when we were in the institute. So we are not technically in the same class ever. And I'm not going to talk about things that you should hear from Vaidya. I'm just going to say, my pleasure to present to you Vaidya. Over to you, Vaidya. So even before Vaidya, you start off, I think it is easy that we start off with some questions and then you start answering. Let's start with this one. Tell us few interesting things in the last 30 years that will help the listeners to know you better. They all would have read about you. Let them know you better. Say something interesting that has happened in the last 30 years.
Uh, Thank you, Elango. Good evening to all of you. And at the outset, if I'm here today having lived wonderfully well with spinal cord injury for over 3 decades now, I owe it to Dr. Mary Verghese, who envisioned physical medicine and rehabilitation in India in 1958 and set up India's first dedicated institute for rehabilitation of persons with spinal cord injury in 1966 as a part of Christian Medical College, Vellore. Perhaps the most interesting thing was that I went straight from the Rehabilitation Institute to IIM Bangalore. I did not even go home for one day, and on the day we went, we did have a party and had a great time, and I was able to resume my education there. And I lived a complete life on campus. My mother was also with me on campus. Her name is Ganga, and at the age of 65 and 66, she had wonderful hostel life and had a terrific relationship with several of the faculty. I subsequently moved on into corporate career with the Hindu and the Sundaram finance groups. And the wonderful thing about both those jobs, as well as my stint 2 years at IIM Bangalore, was that nobody ever spoke to me about my disability. It partly had to do probably with the way they were, and partly also probably the fact that I never conveyed the impression that I was a person who probably needed help. I actually, to this day, I don't think of myself as a person with disability. I just think that instead of walking from place A to place B, I move on a wheelchair from place A to place B. And other than that, I do everything that I would have wanted to do on the day before my injury. And over the years, very early after I came back home, I have fond memories of my nephew Vignesh, who was at the age of 5 and 6. He used to ensure that nobody at home helped me. Not that I tried, but because he had been observing me from very early stage, he was the first person in our family to be born after my spinal cord injury. And he had observed me doing everything. And if and when somebody tried to help me, he'll make sure, please do not help him, let him do it himself. So I had an occupational therapist come policeman at home with me in the form of Vignesh. And I've traveled, I've done everything. I've traveled across the country. Over the past 10 years, I've had the blessing to come in contact with a few thousand persons with spinal cord injury across the country. It's been an amazing experience. I've also got into avid marathon running on a wheelchair without assistance. I may not be the fastest, but I can always say that I was the first to do a 10-kilometer on a wheelchair, a half marathon on a wheelchair. And the most adventurous of them all was the 14.2-kilometer descent of Yelagiri Hills, which is about 250 kilometers from Chennai. And it had hairpin bends, traffic, undulating roads without any protection, but just decided to do that. And scuba diving, getting in deep into the Bay of Bengal. I think variety of things have been done. Personally, I'd like to summarize my 30 years as showcasing the possibilities of life for persons with spinal cord injury.
What have been some of the most important strategies and influences, Vaidhi, that helped you cope with the injury?
First is the philosophy of Agavendiyadapara, which in English roughly translates to always look ahead and do what needs to be done. I think that is something that my mother drilled in all of us, and I think it was deeply ingrained in me. So within 45 minutes of my dive from the first floor at the IIM Bangalore campus, here I was at the St. John's National Academy in Bangalore, and I was asking the duty doctor after the X-ray, will I at least be on a wheelchair? Why did I ask that? I knew my legs were not moving. I did not know about spinal cord. I did not know about spinal cord injury. I did not know about the consequences of spinal cord injury. But what I knew was my legs were not moving. I realized that at least I needed to be on a wheelchair to get back to campus as early as possible and resume and complete my course. That has always been my driving philosophy to this day. That was of immense help. Second, I decided that I will stick to science. I'll stick to evidence-based approach, and I will not fall for false hopes. I will not fall for fraudulent medical, pseudo-medical professionals who offer treatments trying to capitalize on the emotions of the person with spinal cord injury and or the family. And I decided not to try any alternative treatments because the most important aspect was to ensure that I did not suffer any additional damage. That was foremost. And that is at the start of the injury. But for a person with spinal cord injury to really live well throughout his life, uh, absolutely the most important and almost the only thing that is important is skin care. Because if you do not take care of your skin, you will not be able to sit. If you will not be able to sit, you will not be able to do anything. So the only thing I tell myself day in, day out when I wake up is, today I will sit for the longest possible time. And to do that, I will do all the necessary low cost, efficient, and proven methods of skin care that are taught in Christian Medical College, Vellore.
So with these insights you gained, Vaidhi, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them? Because all this knowledge and insights came, but what were some of the challenges that led you to them?
Two. One, it took me 3 months to convince the psychologist or try to convince the psychologist at Christian Medical College, Vellore, in the Rehabilitation Institute, that I will not go into a depression after I go from there. That was a strong belief, and it took time. Second, midway through my rehabilitation, something that I had taken for granted, that I'll be able to go back to IIM Bangalore and resume and complete my MBA program, that it is very understandable in those years. The IIM Bangalore management, with a campus that was not accessible then, with a campus did not have a ramp or a lift, did not have a classroom on the ground floor. The hostels were not accessible, the toilets were not accessible. So it was perfectly understandable that they refused to grant me admission. I was quite prepared for that because I thought I had the option of going back to my previous job, but one person will not have anything of that. And that was Dr. Suranjan Bhattacharjee, head of physical medicine and rehabilitation. Then he went on to subsequently be the director of Christian Medical College, Vellore. Because he had in the mid-80s studied his post-graduation in the United Kingdom and seen persons on wheelchairs leading life, complete life, he would refuse to have nothing of the refusal. He patiently worked with the then management of IIM Bangalore, convinced them, and finally in December 1991, he wrote a 343-page word letter that adorns the Office of Disability Studies at IIM Bangalore even today. In that letter, he made a persuasive case, not just for my readmission, but also for the vision of an India where persons with disability will be empowered to live life to their fullest and highest potential. So I think he did the job of overcoming that challenge. I had to do nothing.
No, I distinctly remember those days, the conversation with Dr. Suranjan and your early days in IIM, how we kind of shaped, and I can even now distinctly remember what we did. But then quickly moving on, we see a lot of people have this doubt. People are there in the wheelchair, even the old people are on wheelchair. Sometimes when you have a small problem with the leg, you get onto the wheelchair. And how complex is the spinal injured people journey on a wheelchair vis-a-vis normal people, when I say people without a disability getting onto a wheelchair? Just can you throw some light for the people?
See, for persons who are elderly and need to be on a wheelchair, they may need to be on a wheelchair for several years in their lifetime. For others who are on a wheelchair for injury reasons, they may need to be on a wheelchair for a short period. But for a person with spinal cord injury, life on a wheelchair is very, very important. It is for a lifetime. And I think a lot of people see several active persons with spinal cord injury, such as Justin or Shams Alam or Sailesh or Nuruddin Goldie, move around very freely and they think that their life is as easy as it is. It isn't. When you have a spinal cord injury, A, there's no cure. B, there are multiple disabilities that happen at one stroke. The severity is greater when at a higher level of injury. And unless you are well trained, unless you lead a disciplined life, you cannot do well. I think I took great heart from one sentence in Nelson Mandela's autobiography. When he was sentenced to 27 years in solitary confinement, he writes in his book, on the first day in prison, he decided living in prison is all about having a disciplined routine. And that is very important. So, I mean, just between, for example, I'm just going to take Ilango as a reference point. Both of us 30 years. And in these 30 years, I've had to spend 7.75 years doing the basic essential things that are forced on you by a spinal cord injury to make sure that you're able to live life well for the remaining 22.25 years. How much time would Ilango have had to spend in this period on basic essential activities? 1.4 years. And I would have spent the equivalent of 1.4 years just in bowel management to take out my stools. I would have spent slightly more than a year in bladder management. And sexual ability is impaired, but not married life or all that is not impossible. A great married life is possible. I did not marry because of a personal reason that I had in our family, which meant that I had to just skip that option. But that is how it is. I think it is extremely, I wouldn't say it's tough. Like for me, all these routines that took 7.7 years, it is just like you get up in the morning and brush your teeth. So like that, I do all these essential activities that will help me live the rest of the day well.
No, I think it's a powerful number. 7.75 years for you and vis-a-vis 1.25 years for me. Is that the kind of number you said? 6 years extra you had to do in the last 30 years, 20% time.
Yep.
And keep in mind, Vaidya, I think you have not said this, is there are a lot of people who by that they accept that they have to do this one, they take time. And I have seen people for 4 years or 5 years not even resorting to this and wasting almost all their time and their caregivers' time on doing the basics. That is for someone like you who has got on top of that fairly quickly. So maybe now that people understand this, a lot of people without a disability here and who want to contribute in some way or other, and kind of give them some basic things how they can contribute. For example, if they find someone on a wheelchair, what should they do? Just give us something. Most of us feel quite awkward when we see them saying we don't know how to do that. Are we supposed to help them, not help them? Just throw some information on that for us.
It's actually easy, Ilango, but unfortunately, I think somehow people think that being inclusive with persons with disability requires some extraordinary steps. It isn't. I think at the first level, you need to recognize and treat every person with disability as your equal. You can just walk up to them and start a conversation. People often ask, how do you start a conversation? I remember Justin Jesudas about 5 years ago, he put it beautifully. He said, why don't you just go and say a hi? It's as simple as that. And you just go say a hi, start a conversation, become friends with them, become part of your life. And you will find oftentimes that there are several aspects of your life that are probably, that is more disabling than what the physical challenges that a person with disability faces. As a society, I think we must not look at persons with disability as needing help or as persons needing pity or as persons needing constant support all the time. Never, I think even I know many, several thousand persons with spinal cord injury from very economically challenged backgrounds who lead lives of immense dignity and purpose. So what they're looking for is an equal opportunity, and equal opportunity means in every walk of life. at home, in the community, at the workplace, in schools. So in everywhere, in the minds of persons without disability. So that's very important. And never help a person with disability without asking if he or she needs help. One of the most common mistakes that happens is the moment people see a wheelchair, they say, oh, chalo, let's go and push. This person must be struggling. Now, if you push a wheelchair without asking the person, you may actually cause a fall, you may cause an accident, and maybe leave that person with a temporary or even a permanent additional complication for life. So never do that. I think once we start, and please do not look at persons with disability as inspiration or motivation. I mean, certainly I can speak for myself. I am not here to be the inspiration quotient for somebody or the motivation quotient for somebody. Maybe the right way is that I'd like, maybe the way I've lived my life can be an example for another person with spinal cord injury or a person with any other disability, or probably even a person without disability. But I'm certainly not an inspiration for whatever I do. I complete a half marathon. Dr. Divya Parashar completes half marathon. There's no difference between that. It's just, I think that you should treat persons with disability with an equal mindset in every way. If it gets into the minds of all of us, it will be great. And as far as accessibility is concerned, if you speak with a large cross section of persons with disability, you will find that yes, it will be great if places have ramps. But what worries all of us more than ramps, and what we need for an accessible India more than ramps, is an accessible toilet in every place. Just to give you a phenomenal analogy, in Tamil Nadu, every single public toilet, market every single public toilet anywhere in Tamil Nadu, every single Amma canteen which serves low cost food is accessible with the ramp and has an accessible, is accessible with a ramp. And in places where there's space, enough ramp that a wheelchair user can do on their own. If it is a cramped area, a ramp that somebody can push the wheelchair user. Every single government office that's come in Tamil Nadu after 2002 has ramps, has accessible toilets, and accessibility, unlike what a few people are popularizing the Western notions of accessibility. Accessibility is inexpensive. All you need is 35 square feet for an accessible bathroom, and it's not going to cost a great deal of money.
I think you said is the right thing. You also said encouraging one, the government is doing that. We spoke about it. Whenever I go there to any place, I first look at it, is the toilet accessible? And in our own way, we must go there and tell them to make that accessible for that. You know, you can't have one small step there. For no reason you should build that one. It is a pressure, as all of us can put it, we can change the society to be a little more inclusive.
You very rightly mentioned the societal attitudes and the architectural barriers as well. What are some of the other big challenges you feel with all the scores of people with spinal cord injury that you've worked with? What are some of the biggest challenges that they face and continue to face?
I think there's only one challenge, Dr. Divya Parashar. If that is handled, everything else can be handled. And that is every doctor who first comes in to connect with a person who reports as having sustained a spinal cord injury or a suspected spinal cord injury. This could be a general medical doctor, and if that is the case, he will definitely pass it on to the specialist, and the specialist will inevitably be spine surgeons, neurosurgeons, and orthopedicians. If this group of doctors and the first general doctor who may come in touch in certain cases, if they report every case of spinal cord injury or suspected case of spinal cord injury to a central number, and which is connected to the peer network, I think we would be able to make a transformative change. Today, for instance, if I know that somebody in Begusarai in Bihar has sustained a spinal cord injury, and if I know it, I will be able to call the family members and or the person and guide them on how to avoid the secondary complications and damages that happen in the first month or two after the injury if the best practices are not followed. And so from that perspective, I think if the community of doctors, that is orthopedicians, spine surgeons, neurosurgeons, and even general doctors start this practice. And I think this will not become a voluntary practice. This is something that has to be mandated by the government of India. Today, the user group is very powerful across the country. It's a growing number, and we would be able to do justice to that. Here, I'd like to just give you a sense of a couple of key turning points that influenced my outcome and my lifestyle over the past 30 years. First is, on the second day after my injury, my sister Lakshmi Rajagopalan, she was able to coordinate with the doctor in whose laboratory she was the chief manager, and Dr. B. Subramaniam and Lakshmi Rajagopalan together made sure that I knew that the place to go was Christian Medical College, Vellore. In 1990, the only other option was the Paraplegic Rehabilitation Center in Kirki, Pune, but that was mainly for the army, and unless you knew anybody in the army, we would not. And that is how I was on the third day after my injury. I was at Christian Medical College, Vellore, in the safe hands of Dr. Suranjan Bhattacharjee, who is one of the most acclaimed physiatrists in the world and is the doyen of rehabilitation in India. And Dr. Suranjan Bhattacharjee, because a couple of my friends had gone and met him, when he met me first on a trolley, I was on a trolley in a small corridor for 2 days because there were no beds. The first thing he told me was, you'll be able to go back to your college and complete your education. Don't worry about that. And with that, he left. And that is how it started. And those were two critical aspects. I mean, getting the right guidance on where to go, and the fact that Dr. Suranjan Bhattacharjee showcased the possibility of life to me. And Ilango and me were also blessed to have an amazing piece of vision from Dr. Suranjan Bhattacharjee. He told us towards the end of December in 1990 that, look, you guys, as I am alumni, you'll be in positions of influence in due course. At an appropriate stage, it would be great if you could do your bit for persons with spinal cord injury. So that is how we actually sat on it for about 18 years or close to 19 years. But in September 2009, we set up the Ganga Foundation as an organization to try and do something for persons with spinal cord injury. So I think this first step is very important, getting the right guidance, and the doctors are best placed. If doctors do not know, today if they connected to the centralized number, the peer mentors and the peers across the country, they will know what to do.
So can you tell us a bit more about the Ganga Foundation, maybe?
We are relentlessly focused on working in the spinal cord injury space. We started in a small way. We were a very volunteer-based organization. Even after 10 years, we continue to be a very small organization relative to the size of the mammoth problem that we face in India, where 90% of people with spinal cord injury do not have access to quality rehabilitation. 95% of wheelchair users sit on low-cost wheelchairs that damage health and lifestyles. Those are types of wheelchairs that went out of use in the developed world in the 1950s. So these are just two examples of the massive challenges. And when you don't have rehabilitation, there's not even any question of livelihood. So massive basic existential challenges is what we deal with in India. And I guess we'll be dealing with that for the next 10 years at least. And our core values are collaborate, the right way always, and to encourage people to live life beyond the comfort zone. And it is this focus on collaboration that led us to connect with various organizations across the country, and we all happily came together and set up the Spinal Foundation as the Pan-India self-help group for persons with spinal cord injury. And the Spinal Foundation, along with various partners across the country, we hope to do in India what took 40 years for the Spinal Injury Association UK to do. We hope to do that in maybe 10 years or 15 years. So that's what we'd like to do. Our focus has always been on capacity building. We've been working closely with the TTK Center for Rehabilitation Research and Development at the Indian Institute of Technology, that is IIT Madras. And that center is headed by Professor Sujata Srinivasan, herself an alumnus of IIT Madras. She has dedicated her entire life to the cause of disability, doing her master's and her PhD in the field of assistive devices. And from that, working with that lab, we've been able to provide user connects, networking, access to rehabilitation expertise. And it's very encouraging to see that a low-cost, affordable standing wheelchair was launched last year. And NeoMotion, startup that manufactures affordable, world-class wheelchairs and outdoor mobility vehicles, that's just started commercial launch since supplies since last year, late last year. And we need more of this. I think we champion the right wheelchair program across the country, because we believe users need to be aware of the importance of the right wheelchair. Users need to know that right wheelchairs availability can improve if they start making demands. And more importantly, doctors, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, nurses, paramedical staff, you name it, the community must know that even if somebody is going to use a wheelchair only for 1 month, they need the right wheelchair. You cannot have one ill-fitting wheelchair that will leave you with additional health complications. And so that is something that we focus on. Our approach has always been grassroots, and we are focused on mostly the economically challenged persons with spinal cord injury. And as an organization, having been a volunteer-led organization till May 2016, it's quite sometimes scary to think that we are an organization with a 52-member team, and 47 of them are either persons with spinal cord injury, including 3 people who are not spinal cord injured, but whose family members have a spinal cord injury. And when persons with spinal cord injury get working to train and motivate others with spinal cord injury, the effect is transformative. Dr. Saranjan Bhattacharjee always used to say of Dr. Mary Varghese, for all of us, she is the first peer trainer in the country. He always used to say that Dr. Mary Varghese never had to go and speak to any person with spinal cord injury and tell them, you can do this, you can do that. Just seeing her on the wheelchair, even doing surgeries, was enough for them to showcase possibilities of life. So that is what is important, and that is what will be our focus areas.
I've seen that, Vaidhi, in terms of how the peer trainers or the people who are spinal injured can influence the others, and they can empathize far better. I've seen the difference with so many people I've come across in the so many years. Tell me, this year 2020 is different. Now most things seem to be done differently compared to earlier what we had done with this COVID. People are not coming out, almost centers are closed. And now what have you done and to make this one still accessible for people who need it?
As an organization, the Ganga Foundation will focus to strengthen 3 of our existing programs. That is, one, the Spinal India Peer Trainers Program, 2, the Right Wheelchair, and 3, the Spinal Foundation, so that it becomes a bastion of support for persons with spinal cord injury across the country. Of course, we have only one partner in that in the Spinal Foundation. From additional initiatives, especially in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic era, we are right now doing a pilot program for persons with rehabilitation of persons with spinal cord injury at their homes, and using technology and using technology and trying to get them to up and running, because there is no question of anybody being able to travel anywhere. And even if travel is possible, if a person with spinal cord injury, either recently injured or injured in the past and needing rehabilitation, if they need to travel, it can prove life-threatening. COVID-19, the chances of a person with spinal cord injury getting a COVID-19 infection is just the same as everybody else. But the gravity of the consequences and the pace at which the consequences will unfold will be significantly graver and faster. So we are actually telling people to stay at home. At least they are alive that way. And but we are trying to see in what ways we can make them as independent as possible. And we hope to make a formal announcement of this project, Touch Rehab, Quality Rehabilitation at Home, once the pilot project proves that we can indeed do it. And we have a outstanding team of experts backing this project. The second initiative that we'd like to launch is a Spinal India Emergency Fund, where we would like persons with spinal cord injury who are blessed to be in a position to contribute to the well-being of others who may need support. We would like them to contribute and build up a pool of funds, and we will double it with matching contributions so that the footprint is double. And we also visualize the Spinal India Virtual Museum, which will become the historic storyboard of persons with spinal cord injury, rehabilitation professionals, family members, institutions, and other stakeholders who have played a key role in the development of the quality of life of persons with spinal cord injury.
That's a lot we are trying to do. While we kind of spend time on getting these operations right, I kind of want to ask this question now. If you have to close your eyes and visualize, now that you have done 30 years, hopefully you live another 50 years. So close your eyes and say, what is your vision of future in this country?
We will know where every person with any disability is. We will be able to identify them. We'll be able to categorize them. We'll be able to refer them to the respective peer organizations. We will be able to give them quality rehabilitation at an early stage to enable them to live life to their fullest and highest potential. I think that is what we should do, and that is something that the government of India can do. And today's technology and with the identification pathways that are available, it is very easy to do compared to, say, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it would have been almost impossible. But it's not as if we have not done it. Last year, the government of India launched a National Sex Offenders Registry. If India has successfully battled polio, it is because there was a program for every person with polio. We need to do that with every disability. And if we do that, and if we are able to give the finest quality of rehabilitation that is possible, I'm sure persons with disability across the country will become meaningful, dignified contributors to the socio-economic development of India. And I think just to get into my head, what is this quality rehabilitation? And I've been reflecting on 30 years. I've had the opportunity to interact with maybe 100 plus, 1,000 plus rehabilitation professionals. And I tried to look at, if I had to set up a rehabilitation facility for all types of disabilities and have a dream team of people, who that would be. And so I'd like to just quickly, to show that such persons actually exist, I would like to present my dream team of rehabilitation.
Go ahead.
As rehabilitation leader, Dr. Suranjan Bhattacharjee, the former director of Christian Medical College, Vellore. As lead physiatrist, Dr. Henry Prakash. As lead physiatrist, Dr. Anand Vishwanathan. All persons with disability, especially who suffer traumatic injuries, they will need outstanding caregiving. Now, this care at the initial stages, and this caregiving can be by a family person or by an external caregiver. And nobody epitomizes and is a perfect caregiver as much as Sheikh Farid. To have Sheikh Farid with you is to have a nurse, an occupational therapist, a physiotherapist, and a caregiver all rolled in one, and coming with as a person who also symbolizes perfection. With disability, even more than doctors, the high quality therapists and peer trainers are important. My therapy leader would be Sunil Raj, and my occupational therapist would be Samson Daniel, who works at R2D2 at IIT Madras and is also a user champion at NeoMotion. My peer trainer would be Sailesh Kumar, who has probably traveled more than anybody across the nooks and corners of India to identify the challenges that people with spinal cord injury face at the grassroots level. Any therapy team will need at least 2 therapists, and my second physiotherapist would be Ramesh Sridharan, who absolutely believes not so much in therapy inside the therapy room, but going outdoors and pushing people to go beyond their comfort zone. My second occupational therapist will be Avani Alexander, who was the occupational therapist for me in 1990 and an extraordinarily tough person. I think when I look back, I wonder how I managed to survive all the things that she wanted me to do. And every team will need an outstanding nurse, and nobody in the spinal cord injury space comes as close to Sister Bhagyam, who used to head nursing for the rehabilitation program at Christian Medical College, Vellore for 7 years before moving on to senior roles at the main hospital. And as psychologists, in general, psychologists tend to be of the type that they will take you back constantly. You'll go 10 steps forward, several of them may take you 8 steps backward. But to this date, the only forward-looking psychologist that I've come across is Dr. Divya Parashar, and her psychology does not start at the rehabilitation center. It starts after the person leaves the rehabilitation center. And cutting across professions, I've not seen any rehabilitation professional use digital media in as powerful a way as she does to touch lives. Prosthetics and orthotics are very important for persons with all disabilities, and unquestionably, the best person that I've come across is Anand Samuel. Social worker and community-based rehabilitation, these are all key areas in any rehabilitation program, and there is none better than Dr. Guru Nagarajan, who's been working at the Christian Medical College Rehab Center. He actually joined when I was undergoing my rehabilitation. Even today, when I look at the sheets that he's developed for me, it had enormous detail. And family members are very, very important, and one of the finest examples I've come across is Shubha Venkatesan. Her husband is a person with spinal cord injury, but she's just not confined herself to ensuring that she's a solid support for him, but also she's a backbone for at least a couple of hundred persons with spinal cord injuries and their families in India. Sports is the easiest way to help persons with disabilities come out and start the process of integrating with the community. And as para-sports leader, I can't think of anybody better than in the whole of India than Justin Jesudas, who is paralyzed neck down, but is an international Paralympic swimmer and international Paralympic rifle shooter. And you need a peer mentor, and I can't think of anybody who does that as thoroughly as Komal Kamra, who's a spinal cord injury for 25 plus years, a microbiologist, a researcher, and a person who is working as in the field of epilepsy as well. And she is empathy personified, and that would be my dream rehabilitation. Of course, this can happen only in a dream. This group brings about close to 500 years of experience, and if we are able to translate all their experiences and preserve it for posterity, I think we would have the complete repository of resources needed to ensure high quality rehabilitation for the foreseeable many decades ahead. Thank you.
Oh, Vaidya, I think what you said is powerful. I think we need to add you as a friend in the dream team. But yeah, the Ganga Foundation and you should work in the next years to create more such dream teams and make it accessible. For the larger audience, there are about 10,000 new spinal injuries happen every year. And while we don't have a database on it, there must be about few lakhs of people at any point who are having that spinal injury.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, there are. It needs a huge transformation for us to do that. But obviously, we can't discuss all of that. We are trying to squeeze in 30 years of Vaidya's life in 30 minutes. So only so much we can cover. We can keep going on and on, but there are a lot of people who want to ask the question now. Before we throw it open for the question, I mean, this brings to end actually the fireside chat of us. So now we would open for, before that, there are two objectives what we wanted to achieve today. One is for the people to understand what spinal injured person goes through and what are the complications, how we can work towards making it to an inclusive society. So society is great only if it becomes inclusive. The second, which is more important for me, the last many years of my personal and professional career, I've seen a lot of people coming to me with the problems. I'm not going to say any problem is a small one, but a problem what Vaidya had gone through or many people had gone through, it puts in a perspective of individual problems, each one is there. And in my career, almost all the people who have come across would have heard about Vaidya's story. I tell them, look at a perspective of your problem with the vis-a-vis someone else is having now. So this is an opportunity I thought we should present for you people to understand how you can handle different problems and step out. That's the objective of this, in addition to helping you to make an inclusive society. With this, what we will do is we'll throw it open. My request to the participants is just chat the question to me. My name is Thambaya Ilango. You will find that you can type the question to me. So few people had sent a lot of questions to me. I'm going to start with that. Meanwhile, you type it and keep sending it to me. I'll keep posing it to Vaidya, and Vaidya can start off. Vaidya, while kind of people are typing the question, let me ask the questions what few people had mailed me, and you can start with that. You spoke about Komal Kamra at one of the ones. She had a few questions. One is, what scares you most today?
At a personal level, nothing, Ilango. But over the past decade, when it's distressing and it really scares me, is the prevalence of sexual harassment and sexual abuse of persons with disabilities across India, including in rehabilitation centers. And I believe there is no room for sexual harassment in any form in society. And when it comes to persons with disability and in rehabilitation centers, the bar for sexual harassment has to be significantly higher. This is something that I never expected to see, but to see this morph in several places has been it's probably the only thing that has saddened me in the 3 decades of living with spinal cord injury.
That's very, very sad. Anyway, she had another question. Name one regret that pinches you the most.
Nothing. I think, which is why if you call me, you will have the song Kurayun Vamillai, which in English means I have no regrets. There are no regrets, which was sung first by M.S. Subbulakshmi in her United Nations concert in 1966.
And the song was composed by Rajaji. And the other one, nowadays many women, this is from question from Bal Gita. Nowadays, more women who suffer SC are identified through WhatsApp groups, etc. How can their needs be addressed? You have plans for them, if anything specific?
I think women with spinal cord injury will also pretty much need timely quality rehabilitation. That can be, that is a sine qua non. There's no negotiation on that aspect. But women with, and having come across these several instances of women with disabilities being abused across the country, I believe every rehabilitation program of women must also include preceding step of teaching them what are the touches that are involved in rehabilitation, what are the right touches, getting them to get their consent, make them understand, and then do the rehabilitation in a sensitive way.
And let me throw this question to even Dr. Divya Parasha. Doctor, you would have gone through that. What do you think? Is there a specific question from one person? Is there anything would you like to add to that, what Vaidya said?
I think the rehab treatments and education materials, including for sexual functioning, seem to be more geared towards males. And there's no surprises there because the incidence of the injuries in men are more. But I think for women, especially when it comes to fertility and childbearing, those aspects get severely neglected. And of course, the challenges for women to also do self-catheterization also is something that they've expressed whenever I've seen them in therapy to be more. So I think being sensitized more towards the specific needs of the women and their body, I think definitely needs to be there. The biggest, and like Vaidhi said, I think I get in touch more with people once the rehab is done. There is no surprises that women, and again, I won't generalize, but the trend typically is that especially women who are married and who get injured, incidences of them being abandoned, separated, or divorced are higher. And they are tending to fend for themselves. And I think one of the things I would strongly encourage is vocational training for women, because they are stuck between in a tough place, and just their vocational rehab needs to be as much an emphasis as their physical and emotional rehab. So that would be my conclusion.
Very powerful one, Doctor. Vaidhi, this question from, I think, Prabhu, it says, there are a lot of influential people in this group now. We are sitting. Can you give us a roadmap of how we can bring the government or the policy makers to consider an inclusive society?
One, disability-wise registry. Two, a realistic, low-cost, accessible India program that focuses on simple ramps and, more importantly, 35 square feet bathrooms everywhere, including in every building that is constructed by the private sector. Three, I think for decades, in the name of low-cost mobility and assistive devices, and then in the garb of touching more people for an X amount of money, what has been inflicted across disability is mediocre devices, well, be it hearing aids or canes or wheelchairs or crutches or artificial legs. I think India must invest in high quality mobility and assistive devices. Havin Jarma, who's a deaf-blind person, became about 4 years ago the first deaf-blind person to become a lawyer from Harvard, and she uses an iPad and a smartphone to do everything, and she's all completely independent in her communication. It does not matter that she can't see, hear, or speak, but technology empowers. And I think to do that for all people with disability in India, let's say even over just a 3-year period, and then take care of the flow that happens every year, is not going to cost the government much. And these three aspects need to be addressed. I think if these three, and India must become an attractive destination for rehabilitation professionals to pursue a career. 95% of the high quality rehabilitation doctors and therapists and prosthetic and orthotic experts with experience, they generally tend to go abroad.
No, I think you captured it well. But having said that, Vaidhi, when compared to 30 years back, when you are struggling to get admission back to IIM, I think it's important to note in the last few years, the number of people with a spinal injury or paraplegics getting admission into this premier institute is kind of grown now. It has become much better. The pace should be far better, but it has become a better place.
Absolutely. And IIM Bangalore has come a long way. And from the time they started taking students with disability in sizable numbers in 2002, and since 2010, I've been there every single year, and every year, even in 2010, I thought IIM Bangalore had reached standards, the highest possible standards of inclusive education. But every single year, just as Virat Kohli has this goal of 1% improvement every day, every year, every day, IIM Bangalore's inclusivity has improved every year. And it was very heartening to hear Professor Vasanthi Srinivasan, who's also a batchmate of ours and who's been working at IIM Bangalore for almost 25 plus years. After Jaskaran Singh, who's the most physically challenged person to get admission to any institute of higher learning in India, she said after having had Jaskaran Singh on campus, we are not bothered about any level of disability. We are ready for everything. And that is not something that costs money. If what has been done at IIM Bangalore can be replicated in every school and college in India, I think that will be a landscape altering development.
I think it is very important. Let me add to this, Vaidhi. He says all of us who are there in corporate world or in the places of influence, first ask, is our office or is our college or our school or our hospital is completely inclusive? We can make a change there. I can tell you about it. I mean, I know Vaidhi for the last 30 years, and our house didn't have a ramp till Vaidhi came once. And that is how much of awareness we have. Now I kind of start looking at it with a keen eye wherever I go there, and I start putting the pressure. But you don't need to wait for Vaidhi to come to your house. You can start hopefully with this conversation. So Vaidhi, let me kind of ask you an embarrassing one, which is you remember medical history of all persons very accurately. Does it show your professionalism or your dedication or both?
I don't see. I think if we, at the end of the day, once the rehabilitation program is over, it is next to impossible for the high quality rehabilitation doctors and therapists to be in touch and guide each and every person with spinal cord injury. A person with spinal cord injury may have some issue or the other once in a while throughout their lifetime. And that is best done by peer trainers. And in a country, I mean, I live in Chennai, I can assure you there's not a single urologist who is capable of understanding bladder management in the context of spinal cord injury. There are probably 2 therapists who understand spinal cord injury. There is not a single physiatrist in Chennai to whom I can go with confidence. Not all physiatrists understand spinal cord injury. We must get that correct. Physiatrist does not mean automatically understanding. And that is pretty much the scenario almost across the country. So persons with spinal cord injury collectively bring significant expertise, and we do feel very share with it liberally. I mean, just to give you an example, yesterday a person with who's paralyzed neck down had some issues, and the doctor to whom he spoke, he told him, please go to the hospital immediately. That person called me, and I told him, just do these 1 or 2 simple things. And he did that, and he texted in the morning saying that I'm absolutely not fully recovered, but I'm much more comfortable, and I'm sure I'll manage at home. So, I mean, I think this is the level of lack of high quality doctors who understand spinal cord injury in India, therapists who understand spinal cord injury in India, and the best person to fill that gap will be persons with spinal cord injury themselves. So from that perspective, I think getting attention to detail, learning from others, and also sharing what I hear with others, I think that's a day-to-day process.
I think well said. I just want to interject and say Professor Raghuram is on this one. He said, thank you for the acknowledgement to IIM Bangalore. And actually, we should thank you, Professor. And he said, our focus is to adjust to those with learning disabilities. That's what he's saying. And Professor, from my side, I can tell you how much IIM has done in the last few years. I think a lot of credit must definitely go to you. Thank you for that. But if you want to add something to Professor is on that. This one.
Professor Raghuram, thank you. And I think I know Professor Raghuram's aspiration is for IIM Bangalore to start having faculty who are persons with disability. I hope that will become reality in the next 5 years or 10 years. I'm sure it will.
There is a question from person Ganesan. He says, in our country with nil or very little social security net, SCI person children are denied quality higher education. What can be done in this from foundations or individuals who work among SCI persons?
It's a very tough one, and I would answer that in 2 parts. I'll first focus on children of persons who are paralyzed below the neck level. Their children tend to face significantly more challenges, because even persons who are paralyzed below the neck, their possibilities are, if they apply their mind, much more. So I think as a first step, we should focus on bundling children of persons who are paralyzed neck down, and we should get the CSR programs and governments to come and fund their education for a lifetime. And I think it's an excellent question, and this is something that has to be done.
The another question is, what is your message to people working in social sector?
People working in social sector, I think uh, I think come in learn. Learn to just work with all types of people with disabilities that you come in touch. You may be a spinal injured person. You don't need to only work with spinal injured person. If you're an amputee, you don't need to just look at amputee. I think it is time that persons with different disabilities look to become networking partners for persons with different types of disabilities. So that way, automatically the footprint improves. At present, I guess persons with spinal cord injury focus on persons with spinal cord injury, persons with amputation focus on amputation. I think if we need to rapidly scale up the peer group networking, I think cross stream working is very important.
We'll kind of keep going maybe another few minutes. I think, is there a way to effort to integrate the native healing systems such as Ayurveda to improve healing? Can that be explored instead of outrightly dismissing it?
I wouldn't outrightly dismiss that, Elango, but I think uh, it's almost a pilgrimage that many persons with spinal cord injury, they go for Ayurveda or other native systems of healing in the hope that they may be able to walk, they may be able to get back to status quo ante. But I don't think the native systems of healing can do that for any disability. What the native systems of healing, where it should be used, is to use them to understand low cost nutrition, some medications. I mean, I think if you look around yourself, almost any plant that your goat or a cow eats is going to be nutritious or will have medicinal value. So those kind of things are definitely reside, but it must be used for the right purpose. But unfortunately, speaking only for spinal cord injury, I think people approach native systems of healing with the hope that they'll walk again and do that. And that is something that I believe that persons with spinal cord injury should not do. While wanting to walk is a legitimate aspiration, the reality is that neurological recovery is impossible after spinal cord injury. Even if you walk with assistive devices, the space of walking is not going to be good enough for functional activity, and you must focus on moving ahead with active life with what is good and with the wheelchair as a mobility option. And if by the grace of God there is physical improvement, and if you start walking in some form, nobody is going to be unhappy.
I think the other one, which is a very interesting suggestion, I will read it out here. Other area where you can improve dissemination of information is to provide a list of trusted vendors stroke manufacturers for supply and support of disability aids, including equipment, accessories, and consumables. Price information also can be made part of it. If you can upload this list on a periodic basis, it will be useful for a large number of people. I thought it seemed a very sensible advice. Sorry.
It is, Elango, but I think the number of entities that manufacture high quality assistive or mobility devices is you can count it on the fingers of one hand. But we will nonetheless put that up and hope that number keeps increasing over the years.
I think we should look at it. All the more reason maybe we should put someone. I kind of know, both of us know the number of people who are sitting on a wrong wheelchair in this country. We can take the step now. And I'm going to ask you the last couple of questions now. They're a little, I don't know how can I answer. What is the life expectancy of a rural Indian acquiring a spinal cord injury vis-a-vis an urban Indian acquiring a spinal cord injury? There are, you can answer.
I think I would, rather than looking at rural Indian versus urban Indian, I would look at as persons receiving high quality rehabilitation in a timely manner and the rest. Persons who receive quality rehabilitation in a timely manner and are taught practices of low cost living, I think their quality of lives and life expectancy is should and will be higher. I don't think we have actual research to prove this, but based on empirical evidence over the past 10 years, I think that can be stated as a fact. Something else that can be stated as a fact is any person with spinal cord injury, or for that matter, any disability who's into any sports, leads a much fitter, stronger, and more active life. And persons who do not receive this quality rehabilitation, or who receive very delayed rehabilitation, their quality of life and life expectancy will definitely be compromised. No doubts about that.
I think it's a good one. Would you like to say, somebody says, what happened to the state spinal injury centers? How many have started and are they doing a good job?
Every state government, I think, has a spinal injury center, and uh, there was also an initiative to set some region-specific spinal injury centers. Physical, they have physical infrastructure, but do they have high quality rehabilitation professionals? I think there the gap is very huge, but it is something that can be worked on easily because the physical infrastructure is there. If you are able to get a small group of we have high quality rehabilitation professionals work with these centers and offer training programs at zero cost or at a low cost rather than exorbitant rates. I think that is how one needs to spread rehabilitation expertise. I think spreading rehabilitation expertise should not become a money-making proposition for any organization. And I think that is important. That is where I think Dr. Mary Varghese' vision of setting up education streams in physiotherapy, occupational therapy, prosthetics and orthotics, physiatry, and allied professions, that is leading to a significant increase in the number of high quality professionals and who are spreading out slowly across India. But as I mentioned, because of the lack of attractive career opportunities, at least 90 to 95% of them navigate abroad as well. But at least they are touching their lives in good ways, and that has to be the focus.
No, I think well said. Let me put the last question, which is by the 20 years hence, you will be 75 years. I don't know whether mathematically that is right, because for others, I tell Vaidhi tells me he's 21. With a lot of difficulty, I convinced him to be 25 because legal drinking age in India is 25. So having said that, let me get the question, Vaidhi, back. In 20 years from now, you'll be 75 years. What is that you see would have been achieved, notwithstanding that I wish you 100 years of service to humanity? Maybe just...
For sure, I wish to live to 100, no doubts about that. And I think by 75, especially if we are able to leverage technology and the high quality rehabilitation expertise that resides in an increasingly larger number of people, we would have solved the problem of existential issues. And if we have 10 more startups in mobility and assistive devices, such as NeoMotion from IIT Madras, I think we would have suppliers of high quality mobility and assistive devices. And once those two are in place, I think you will find a lot of people with disabilities will find their way. So that I think will definitely happen. I have no doubts about that.
Maybe I think there are a few questions there, and I'll ask them to send. I will sum up all these questions and send it to you. Maybe you can respond back to them now that there are a couple of people also suggested that we shouldn't put too much stress on you. And with this one, what I kind of want to thank you on behalf of everyone. And it has been a great hearing from you about what you've done 30 years. More importantly, what do you think needs to happen with that? And I wish that you would close it with the final words, and then we should do more of this quite often.
I would like to close it with the final words that were used in the letter that was written by Dr. Suranjan Bhattacharjee in 1990 to IIM Bangalore. As a country, India must do everything that is possible to make sure that persons with disability are able to live to their highest and fullest potential. Thank you. Thank you, Irango, and thank you, Dr. Divya Parash.
Thank you all. Today, I must apologize to a lot of people who couldn't come there. For some reason, Zoom, it allowed only 100 people, whereas we thought there are 500. Countless people. If any of your friends are there, please express our sincere regrets. And we will do one more of this to definitely cover up. Thank you, and good night, all of you. And thank you, Dr. Divya. It was great to have you with us. Bye. With this, we'll end, Vaidhi.
Thanks. Thank you.
Dear all, if you are a person with spinal cord injury, or if you know any person with a spinal cord injury, or sitting on a wheelchair, or unable to move his legs or hands, or is confined to bed at all times. You may call S. Vaidyanathan for the right guidance and support. You can reach Vaidyanathan at 97909 36844. Let me repeat the number: 97909 36844. Thank you.